Alien Sentinel! She cried as the human medic set her bone without tools. A storm of destruction, twisted wreckage, searing flames, choking fumes. Saren's mind reeled, senses battered by the aftermath of the crash. Heat pressed against her cheeks. The acrid stench of burning fuel caught in her throat. Somewhere behind her left ear, metal shrieked and popped, spewing embers into the indigo haze. She tried to move. Pain exploded up her leg, raw and sharp. The heavy slab of her cruiser's hull pinned her from the thigh down, its edges biting into her skin. Agony radiated from the mangled limb, turning her vision ragged and white. Gasping, Saren clawed at the ground, fingers searching for the familiar hilt of her plasma blade. Her hand met only scorched fabric and slick, sticky blood. She bared her teeth, suppressing a cry. Every breath scraped her lungs with the sour taste of chemical fumes and dust. All around her, the alien landscape loomed. Shadows stretched long and strange, painted in streaks of burnt gold that flickered with every flare of fire. Her heart hammered against her ribs. From within the shifting, smoky blur, a figure moved, deliberate, human. Nathan. She knew his walk, the sturdy frame, the unhurried calm that had always unsettled her. Once her captive, now free, moving with a strange certainty through the carnage she could not escape. "Stay back," she rasped, voice ragged, desperation wrapped around every word. "Don't touch me!" Nathan's boots crunched through charred debris. He didn't slow. His face, drawn in the firelight, was shadowed but resolute. He stopped just out of reach, eyes flicking from her twisted leg to the broken hull. "I'm not here to fight you, Saren." His tone was infuriatingly calm. "You're trapped. The medkit's gone." She tried to drag herself away, but the pain doubled her over. "I'd rather die than let a human." "Then you'll get your wish if I don't act." Nathan knelt beside her, hands steady, movements precise. "Your femur's shattered, you're bleeding out. If I don't set the bone, you lose the leg. If not your life." His words sliced through her bravado. Saren's vision blurred, her head lolled back. Still, she found the venom to snarl. "Don't pretend concern. You'd finish what your kind started." He met her glare with something unexpectedly gentle. "I'm not your enemy right now. Here, there are no sides. Only the living and the dead." For the first time, he said her name, not as a curse, but as if it meant something. "Saren." The sound of it, spoken in his rough accent, struck her like another wound. She spat at his boots. "Do it then, if you must." Nathan nodded once, jaw clenched. "This will hurt. A lot." She steeled herself, locking her gaze on a splintered section of hull. Nathan's hands were strong, calloused, shockingly gentle as he braced her thigh. "Ready?" She didn't answer, just squeezed her fists until her claws drew blood from her own palms. He set the bone with a swift, practiced wrench. White-hot pain seared through her, blinding, absolute. Saren screamed, the sound ripped from her, as if her soul tore free. The world spun, faded to black at the edges. The last thing she saw was Nathan's face above hers, regret and determination warring in his eyes. Then, merciful darkness claimed her. She woke to a night transformed, cooler, quieter, the chaos replaced by uneasy stillness. Her leg was bound and splinted with fragments of hull, the wounds carefully cleaned and wrapped. The ache was dull now, tolerable. Nearby, a fire flickered within a makeshift shelter, two battered panels propped together. Nathan sat by the flames, rifle across his knees, scanning the darkness with measured vigilance. He glanced over, noticing she'd stirred. "You're awake. Good." His voice was brisk, impersonal but not unkind. Saren shifted, hissing at the pain. "Why didn't you just leave me?" Nathan shrugged, gaze fixed on the fire. Couldn't. You'd have bled out. Besides, he hesitated, something flickering behind his eyes. I need you. Out here, we're both useful. For now, that's all that matters. She narrowed her eyes, trying to pierce the mask he wore. You expect me to believe that's all? That you did this out of logic? He looked at her then, and for an instant the sorrow in his eyes was plain, deep, haunting, inexplicable. There are no sides anymore, Saren. Just the living and the dead. The fire cracked between them, casting shifting shadows on the wreckage and on their faces. Saren listened to the night and to the quiet ache in her bones, knowing logic alone could not explain why he'd saved her. Not when she remembered the sadness in his gaze. A fragile routine emerges. Each morning, Saren's eyes fluttered open to the muted clatter of Nathan moving through the wreckage, collecting battered ration packs or foraging in the scrub beyond the shelter. He returned with water in a blackened canteen, the rim warm from the sun, and morsels of meat or strange roots he'd tested first on himself. His hands, broad and rough, worked with silent efficiency, stripping bark for kindling, weaving thin vines into makeshift cord, checking the fire's embers to ensure they would last the chill of night. Saren watched him, suspicion simmering in her gaze, but hunger and pain had whittled her resistance to a thin edge. She accepted the food in silence, each bite a reminder of her dependence, each swallow thick with pride. Nathan never forced conversation, but offered short, practical updates. Saw tracks by the West Ridge, or water's clean, but only enough for 2 days if the rains don't come. The words were few, but his tone was steady, grounded. She began to notice the man beneath the enemy, the way his fingers, scarred and battered, handled the sharp-edged debris without flinching. How he moved through the alien wilds, always alert, eyes scanning for threats with a practiced wariness. She caught the fatigue etched in the lines around his mouth, the way he favored his left shoulder as if carrying some old wound. At dusk, when the sky bruised violet, she sometimes glimpsed him staring into the dark with a look that was neither hope nor despair, but something quieter, more enduring. Necessity, relentless and patient, began to erode the wall between them. One evening, Nathan crouched beside her as the fire's glow sharpened the planes of his face. He checked the splint on her leg, fingers tracing the bindings with a medic's care. Saren tensed, ready to bite off a retort, but his touch was careful, never lingering longer than needed. "You know what you're doing," she said, watching him more closely than she meant to. He grunted. "Spent some years as field medic, deep space salvage teams." She arched a brow, skepticism warring with curiosity. "That's not a job for the faint of heart." He shrugged, not meeting her eyes. Someone had to keep the crews breathing long enough to haul scrap. He hesitated, then added, "Not much glory, but vital." She studied his hands, noting the surety in his movements. "You've set bones without equipment before?" Nathan's lips twisted into a tired half-smile. "More times than I care to count. Not always pretty, but it works." She let out a slow breath, surprised by the grudging respect curling in her chest. "You could have let me die." "I could have." He glanced at her then, and for a heartbeat she saw the weight he carried. Old losses, fresh exhaustion. "Didn't want to." Saren looked away, the words lodging somewhere unfamiliar inside her. The silence between them felt less jagged, tinged now with something gentler, unspoken. That night, as the first fingers of darkness slipped between the ruins, danger prowled at the edge of the firelight. Saren's senses prickled. A predator's gaze, heavy and unblinking, watched from the gloom. She heard the soft guttural growl, felt the tremor in the ground as something massive circled their fragile sanctuary. Nathan moved instantly, gathering his rifle and easing to the entrance. Saren, unable to stand, gritted her teeth. Go, she hissed. It's after the weak one. Face it, kill it. He shook his head, calm but firm. That's what it wants. I'll handle it another way. Saren's eyes flashed, incredulous. You'll die, trying to be clever. But Nathan was already moving, scanning the debris with sharp intent. He seized a length of ship cabling and dragged over a shattered support strut, hands flying in deft knots. Saren watched, breath held, as he fashioned a crude snare, threading the loop through a jagged vent in the hull. The beast slunk into view, a sinewy creature with 4 pale, glinting eyes and claws like obsidian hooks. It stalked forward, hackles raised, jaws glistening with venom. Nathan held his ground, tossing a fragment of rations past the snare. The animal pounced, hunger overpowering caution. A split second. Then the snare snapped closed around its forelimb. The creature thrashed, shrieking in rage, but the improvised trap held. Nathan lunged, driving the butt of his rifle down with grim precision, stunning the predator. It collapsed, twitching, then fell still. For a moment, the world was silent, but for Saren's ragged breathing. She stared at Nathan, astonished. You outsmarted it. He offered no triumph, just a quick, measured nod. No sense fighting strength with strength. He wiped sweat from his brow, chest heaving. Her scorn dissolved, replaced by something new. Respect. Grudging, but real. She studied him as if seeing him for the first time. That was well done. I underestimated you. Nathan offered a wry, exhausted smile. Most people do. After dragging the carcass away and scattering the remains to avoid attracting more predators, Nathan disappeared for a time, scavenging for more cable among the twisted remnants of the ship. The world had cooled, the wind biting now, and he worked by the flicker of a scavenged lantern. His hands brushed over a section of hull, fingers pausing on a pattern of charred scoring. He frowned, scraping away soot until the lines revealed their true shape. High-energy burns, unmistakable. His breath caught in his throat. The ship had not simply failed. It had been shot down. Nathan stood in the shadows, the revelation sinking in, cold and heavy. He traced the marks again, memories of star-bright violence sparking behind his eyes. If the crash was no accident, then Saren was not just a casualty of fate, and neither was he. Someone had meant for them to fall. He glanced back toward the fire where Saren sat silhouetted in the wavering light, sharpening a splinter of metal. She was dangerous, clever, and wounded, and now, perhaps, a fellow survivor of something larger than either of them had realized. Nathan set his jaw, the secret burning in his chest. He would keep this knowledge to himself for now. Too many questions, too much at stake. For tonight, survival was enough. As he returned to the shelter, the silence between him and Saren was no longer hostile, but charged with unspoken truths. She looked up, her eyes searching his face for a clue he would not give. He offered her water, and she took it without a word. The fragile truce held, the boundaries between enemy and ally blurred by necessity and shared ordeal. Saren wondered, for the first time, what else Nathan was hiding, and whether, in the shadow of destruction, trust could ever be more than another weapon. While Nathan sat watch, the secret of the ship's true fate weighed heavy on his mind, unspoken and unresolved, as night settled thick and uncertain around them. Suddenly, Saren's condition worsened. It began with a shiver she tried to hide, teeth clenched so hard her jaw ached. By nightfall, sweat slicked her brow, her breathing grew ragged, and the flesh around her splinted leg was hot and red. Nathan's keen eyes missed nothing. As she trembled beneath the patched blanket, he pressed a calloused palm to her forehead, lips thinning at the heat he found there. "Fever," he muttered, voice low and grim. "Damn it." Saren tried to muster defiance, but her body betrayed her. Her tongue felt thick. She drifted in and out of fevered dreams, her surroundings shifting between the broken shell of their shelter and the marble corridors of Vishari palaces, full of threat and intrigue. Each time she surfaced, Nathan was there, face drawn with fatigue and concern. He worked tirelessly. By day, he scoured the rocky slope for roots and leaves, drawing on half-remembered field manuals and the alien flora he'd tested on himself. He mixed poultices from bitter-smelling sap and mashed bulbs, bandaging her wounds with strips of scavenged fabric. He cleaned the gashes on her thigh, changing wrappings with gentle efficiency, never once flinching at the sight of her blood or the inhuman set of her bones. When the fever burned hottest, she clawed at the sheets, cursing in Vishari. Nathan sat beside her, holding her down with steady hands, bathing her face and neck with cool water. Sometimes she fought him, wild with pain and humiliation, pride warring with helplessness. "Stop. Let me go," she would rasp, eyes wild, voice stripped of command. "I'm not leaving you," he replied, always gentle, always certain. "You need to ride this out. I won't let you die." His care unsettled her more than any wound. He fed her spoonfuls of broth, coaxed her to drink, dabbed sweat from her brow. Each act, meant to preserve her life, left her more exposed. She could not hide the trembling of her limbs, the tears that came unbidden, the way her pride dissolved beneath the fever's relentless assault. Sometimes, in the haze of delirium, she reached for him, clutching his hand, muttering half-formed pleas in her own tongue. Nathan never recoiled. If she cursed, he endured. If she wept, he offered quiet reassurances, his voice a constant in a world spinning out of control. Her dreams tangled with memory. The opulent halls of the Vishari courts rose before her, all marble and shadow. She saw Carl, her cousin, ever smiling, eyes sharp with ambition. Words spilled from her fevered lips, fragments of rivalry, whispered threats, secrets meant for no one's ears but her own. "Carol will have them all," she murmured once, breathless. "He'll take the throne with poisoned words, no blood needed, but he'll spill it anyway." Nathan, tending her wounds by firelight, listened. He caught names, dates, half-remembered alliances. Another time, her voice broke on a sob. "The accident. Not accident. They wanted me gone. Out of the way. Exile is mercy, compared to what Carol planned." He pieced together the truth as her fever raged. The crash was no twist of fate. Serene was a marked woman, her exile orchestrated by those she should have called kin. As Nathan pressed another cool cloth to her brow, he realized he was more than a fellow survivor now. He was a witness to her fall, the only one to see her stripped of every defense. Serene's fever broke as suddenly as it came. Dawn crept into the shelter, pale and tentative. She woke to the feeling of air on her damp skin, the pain in her leg now a muted ache instead of a burning fire. For a long moment she could not place where she was, nor why the world felt so changed. She turned her head. Nathan sat slumped at her side, chin resting on his chest, the faint rise and fall of his shoulders the only sign he was not dead. His face was drawn with exhaustion, dark circles painting the skin beneath his eyes. He had not left her, not even to sleep. Saren studied him, memory piecing itself together in flashes, his hands at her brow, his voice calling her back from the dark, the patient way he endured her anger and shame. Shame burned in her now, hot as the fever that had nearly killed her. He had seen her at her weakest, stripped of pride, unable to command even her own body. He had not turned away. She shifted, the movement stirring Nathan. He blinked, groggy, then alert, worry etched in every line of his face. "Saren? You're awake." She met his gaze, searching for pity, for judgment. She found neither. "How long?" she whispered, voice rough. "A few days," he answered quietly. "You were burning up. I thought—" He broke off, running a hand through his hair. "You made it." Saren swallowed, pride warring with a strange, aching gratitude. "You cared for me. All of me." His mouth quirked in a tired smile. "You'd have done the same." She snorted, a weak echo of her old self. "You give me too much credit, human." He shrugged, unbothered by the barb. "Maybe. Or maybe you just don't know yourself as well as you think." The air between them was changed, no longer charged with threat or resentment, but with the weight of shared ordeal. Saren felt it in her bones, the way her anger no longer had a target. She was not captive, and he was not captor. They were something else. Bound together by fire and pain, by secrets neither had chosen to share. Nathan busied himself, checking her bandages with practiced care. "You'll need time to recover. Infection's beaten, but you're still weak." She nodded, accepting the truth without argument. "You heard me," she said at last, voice low. "In the fever." He hesitated, then nodded. "Enough to understand. You were betrayed." Saren closed her eyes, letting the admission settle. "You could use that against me?" He shook his head. "Not my way." A silence fell, gentler this time. Saren let it stretch, then reached for his hand, awkward, tentative. He let her hold it, their fingers twining for a heartbeat. "Thank you," she said, the words foreign but true. Nathan squeezed her hand, offering nothing more than his presence. It was enough. Something fundamental had shifted between them. They were no longer two enemies thrown together by fate, but survivors who had seen the worst in each other and chosen not to look away. Saren lay back, watching Nathan as he finally allowed himself to rest, exhaustion softening his features. She knew, without question, that he would not abandon her. Whatever came next, they would face it together, no longer as captor and captive, but as two souls bound by shared ordeal. As Saren regained her strength, the days settled into a different kind of rhythm. Conversation, once edged and brittle, softened between them, flowing in fits and starts as Nathan stoked the fire, or as Saren practiced flexing her mending leg. With each passing day, they found themselves trading more than necessities. They traded stories, scars, and pieces of themselves, each revelation prying open the silence that had long divided them. One afternoon, as stormlight flickered beyond their battered shelter, Saren watched Nathan clean his battered rifle. "You trust that thing more than people," she observed, tone light but edged with something deeper. Nathan grinned without looking up. "Metal's honest. Never lies about its limits. People are a different matter." She snorted, then stretched her limbs, her crimson skin catching the dying sunlight. He watched her, eyes lingering on the tall, pointed ears swept back in thought. Where once he saw only an alien, proud and remote, now he saw the nuances, the faint silvering at the tips of her ears, the old burn scars running along her forearm. She caught his gaze and, after a moment's hesitation, rolled up her sleeve further. "Vishari hunt mark," she said quietly, tracing the jagged scar that twisted along her bicep. "I earned it during my trial of passage, survived a Varix pack. Most don't." Nathan leaned closer, showing her his own patchwork of scars, white lines, puckered pink, a starburst near his elbow. "This one, first hull breach. Crew didn't make it, but I did. This," he pointed to a faded bite on his shoulder. "Desert moon. Parasite nest. Still hate the smell of sulfur." Their laughter, raw and genuine, filled the small shelter. The old boundaries, alien and human, sentinel and captive, blurred beneath the weight of what they shared. Saren touched the edge of Nathan's newest scar, brow furrowed. You survive by luck? Or stubbornness? Stubbornness, he said, grinning. And a fair share of someone else's luck. She looked away, thoughtful. We are both more than what they made us. As her strength returned, Nathan helped her shape a sturdy crutch from a length of hull bracing and scavenged cord. He tested the balance himself, then handed it over. Saren accepted it with a nod, rising gingerly and testing her weight. Her movements were slow but determined, and for the first time, Nathan glimpsed the Sentinel she'd once been, a leader, a fighter, not just a broken exile. We need a better place, Nathan said as she steadied herself. This shelter won't hold forever. You up for a walk? Her ears flicked in challenge. Lead, human. I'll follow. They moved together through the tangled wilds, Saren's sharp eyes and keener hearing picking up the distant trills of unseen creatures. Nathan cleared fallen branches, mapping a route with the instincts of a man long used to survival. Their silences were companionable now, punctuated by bursts of conversation, memories of worlds lost to war, or jokes about the taste of boiled roots. On the third day of searching, they crested a mossy rise, and Saren paused, ears pricking forward. There, metal, beneath the moss. Nathan pushed aside a mat of ferns, revealing the scarred hull of a ship, half buried and shrouded in vines. He knelt, fingers trailing over the worn insignia, a Vashari mark, faded but unmistakable. It's a penal barge, Saren said, voice tight with disbelief. I've seen their kind, old transports for prisoners, meant to disappear. Together, they forced open the warped hatch. Inside, the air was thick with decay and silence, every footstep echoing off bare metal. The interior was stripped, but traces of the past remained. Shackles bolted to the walls, a tangle of dried vines through the floor grates. Farther in, they found a flickering console, its power failing but not yet dead. Nathan wiped grime from the display. Let's see what secrets you're hiding. He coaxed the console to life, fingers dancing over universal code. Lines of data scrolled across the cracked screen. Transfer orders, prisoner manifests, crew lists. Saren leaned in, reading the Vashari script with growing horror. Look, she whispered. The manifest, signed by Torvin Saul. Nathan glanced up. That name means something to you. She nodded, jaw clenched. He was Carol's right hand. If he signed this, then Carol's fingerprints are all over it. They dug deeper. The logs detailed the last days of the barge, a forced landing, systems failure, crew and prisoners abandoned to die. Then one phrase, cold and clinical, flashed on the display. Planetary holding, haven, prisoners non-essential, exile protocol. Nathan exhaled slowly. Haven. That's what they call this place. Saren pressed a shaking hand to her mouth. They never meant for anyone to leave. This isn't a planet. It's a graveyard. For a long moment she stood frozen, reading and rereading the list of names. Lost Vashari, forgotten by their own people. Her own fate crystallized before her. Not a loyal sentinel, not even a worthy enemy, but discarded refuse. The truth crashed down on her, crushing and cold. Her legs buckled, and she collapsed to the deck, shoulders racked by silent sobs. Nathan moved without hesitation, kneeling beside her and gathering her into his arms. He offered no words, no hollow comforts, only his presence, strong and unwavering. Saren wept for her lost honor, for the future stolen from her by jealous kin, for every sentinel who had vanished into the dark. He held her, his embrace steady and silent, letting her grief spend itself against his chest. At last, her shuddering eased. She looked up, eyes red but unbroken. Nathan brushed a strand of hair from her brow. We're not what they say we are, he said softly. You're not refused, Saren. You're a survivor. Same as me. She let herself lean into him, drawing strength from the warmth of his body, the certainty in his words. Together then? She asked, voice barely more than a whisper. He nodded, the promise unspoken but absolute. Together. In that moment, among the ghosts and shadows of the penal barge, a new partnership was forged, one not born of duty or survival alone, but of trust, tempered by pain, and hope kindled in the ruins of despair. Driven by betrayal and a new resolve, Sarin and Nathan wasted no time. The shock of what they had uncovered aboard the penal barge still burned in their veins, but now it was flint striking steel, fuel for a plan. Saren's voice was low, her eyes narrowed with the precision of a predator. We have power cells in the scout wreck. The barge's array could broadcast. If we splice them, maybe, just maybe, we can signal for help. Nathan met her gaze, his own determination hardening. It's a long shot, but it's a shot. I'll handle the wiring if you keep watch. We're not alone out here. They mapped their route with quick strokes in the dirt, plotting the trek from the barge to the ruined scout ship and back. Every step was a gamble, the wilds thick with shifting shadows and the scent of danger. Saren moved as steadily as her wounded leg allowed, her crimson tail flicking with tension behind her, ears high and alert. Nathan carried tools, spare cabling, and his battered rifle, his posture wary but confident. The work was grueling. They scavenged in the half-light, fingers numb from cold and effort. Nathan dug through the scout's scorched hull, cursing softly as he freed an intact power cell from a tangle of fused metal. Sweat beaded on his brow as he checked the charge. Enough, just barely, to fire up a beacon. Saren perched above, senses straining for any sign of threat. Her claws drummed a nervous rhythm on the hull, tail lashing with every distant howl or unnatural silence. Almost got it, Nathan grunted, straining against a stubborn bolt. Quiet, Saren hissed, scanning the shadows. Something moves beyond the ridge. They froze, breath held, until a flock of winged insects erupted skyward in a flurry of color. Saren relaxed, only slightly. False alarm, she murmured. But hurry. They packed what they could carry, limping back through thickets and moss-choked gullies. By dusk, their bodies ached, muscles trembling with exhaustion, but neither suggested rest. Night after night, they shared the spoils of Nathan's hunts, sometimes the tough, gamey meat of local creatures, sometimes the starchy roots Saren unearthed near the barge. They ate in the blue glow of the derelict's flickering lights, their conversation drifting further with each meal. Nathan spoke of Earth in broken, nostalgic fragments, rivers winding through forests, cities lit with neon and rain, the taste of salt on ocean winds. I miss the sound of real rain, he said once, voice soft as he watched the strange alien drizzle patter against the ruined hull. The kind that soaks you straight through. Saren smiled, the expression unfamiliar but genuine. On my world, rain is liquid fire, burns away the old, reveals the new. When I was a cub, I ran beneath it, unafraid. He looked at her, admiration and longing flickering in his eyes. I'd have liked to see that. You, fearless, unbroken. She nudged his shoulder with her own. You see it now. I endure. Their hardship forged something deeper than alliance. Small gestures became precious. Nathan steadying Saren's crutch as she climbed a broken stairwell, Saren catching his hand when he stumbled in the dark. A shared glance lingered longer than necessary, meaning blossoming in the silence between words. Saren found herself watching the line of Nathan's jaw as he worked, the steady strength in his hands, the way he listened with his whole body. Nathan, in turn, traced the delicate motion of her tail, the warmth of her skin where it brushed his arm in passing. One night, after a long day of scavenging, they sat together at the edge of the penal barge's ramp, watching alien stars flicker above the ruins. Nathan handed her a scrap of roasted meat, his fingers brushing hers. "Tell me about your skies," he said. She closed her eyes, remembering. They shift. Colors you can't imagine, nebulae bleeding into one another, constellations that never stay fixed. "When I was young, I'd climb the palace spires to see the whole galaxy at once. I thought I could find my destiny in the stars." Nathan was quiet for a time. "And did you?" She looked at him, something fierce and tender in her gaze. "Not the destiny I expected, but perhaps the one I needed." Their days bled together, a relentless cycle of labor and hope. Saren's limp grew less pronounced as her strength returned. Together, they hauled the last power cell to the barge, Saren keeping her senses sharp while Nathan worked at the console, sweat tracing lines through the dust on his face. The silence was filled with unspoken things, the air between them charged with anticipation and nerves. Finally, they stood inside the derelict's comms chamber, the array's battered dish pointed skyward through a jagged rent in the hull. Nathan wiped grime from his hands, glancing at Saren. "All right," he said, voice rough with fatigue and hope. "Moment of truth." Saren handed him the last bundle of cables. "If this works, every scavenger in the sector will hear us. Are you sure?" He nodded. "No turning back now." She leaned close, watching as he spliced the wires, his hands steady despite the tension in his jaw. "You're good at this," she murmured. Nathan looked up, eyes locking with hers. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the crackle of electricity, the racing of hearts. "Saren," he said, voice thick with something raw. "I'm not just fighting for myself anymore. I'm fighting for you. For us." The words hung between them, electric and undeniable. Saren stared at him, lips parted in surprise. Then something inside her broke free, wild and certain. She closed the distance with a single step, her hands fisting in his shirt, and kissed him fiercely. The kiss was not gentle. It was fire and hunger and all the unsaid things that had grown between them, a collision of equals, of survivors forged in adversity. Nathan's arms circled her waist, anchoring her as if she might vanish. Saren pressed closer, her body fitting to his, her crimson tail curling around his leg in a silent claim. When they broke apart, breathless, the air between them was forever changed. No longer alien and human, sentinel and exile, but simply two hearts bound together, their fates intertwined. Nathan smiled, touching his forehead to hers. "For us," he whispered again. Saren's answering smile was all promise and challenge. "For us," she echoed, voice trembling with hope. Outside, the beacon flared to life, sending their call across the stars, a signal not just for rescue, but for the beginning of something new. The beacon was ready. Nathan's hands hovered over the battered switch, breath caught tight in his chest. Saren stood at his side, her tall, crimson form haloed by the ghostly glow of the penal barge's console. The comm array loomed above them, patched and braced, its battered dish pointed at the sky. The last days had bled together in a haze of exhaustion and hope, every moment building to this one. "Ready?" Nathan asked, voice rough, eyes flickering to Saren. She reached out, her fingers threading through his, grounding him in the present. "Do it," she said. There was steel in her words, but something softer too, a tremor of anticipation, the echo of everything they had risked. Nathan exhaled and threw the switch. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. The console's cracked surface reflected only their anxious faces and the dancing firelight behind them. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. Saren's tail lashed, her ears standing rigid, every muscle tensed for disappointment. Then, with a soft chime, the console flickered to life. A low hum vibrated through the floor plates, building in intensity as the system drew on the salvaged power cells. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, ancient Vishari, spliced with human characters where Nathan had forced alien and Terran technology to cooperate. Outside, the comm array's antenna glowed with pale blue energy, the lines of force crawling like lightning along its length. A pulse of energy shot skyward, visible even through the gaps in the hull. The beacon's signal leapt into the void, a flare against the black, hope and vengeance entwined in every burst of data. Saren's breath caught. She squeezed Nathan's hand, her eyes reflecting the light of the console. "It's working," she whispered, disbelief and relief mingling in her voice. He turned to her, lips quirking in a tired smile. "We did it. Someone's going to hear that." "Someone," she echoed, voice grave. She knew as well as he did that the signal could draw saviors, or executioners, allies, or the architects of her exile. Perhaps even the ones who had signed Nathan's own fate so many years ago. Still, the uncertainty no longer gnawed at her the way it once had. There was courage in the unknown now, a defiance that came from surviving the unthinkable together. They stood side by side, hands clasped, watching the signal flare and pulse into the stars. Nathan felt the tremor in Saren's fingers, the tension and hope wound tightly inside her. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "No going back," he said softly. Her tail brushed his leg, a silent affirmation. "No back worth going to," she murmured. "Only forward. Together." He drew her in, their foreheads touching. The quiet that settled between them was not empty, but brimming with all the things they no longer needed to say. The hardships they had endured, the broken bones, the fever, the betrayals, had forged something stronger than mere alliance. They were not the same people who had eyed each other across the wreckage with suspicion and contempt. They were partners now. Survivors. Something more. Outside, the alien night stretched vast and unknowable. The sky above shimmered with distant constellations, some familiar to Nathan, others born of Saren's childhood dreams beneath nebulae and shifting stars. At the edge of the clearing, a large, shaggy beast of burden grazed with complete indifference to the drama unfolding nearby. Its coarse, long fur hung in tangled curtains, and it tore at the strange grass with methodical patience. Life, Nathan thought, always persisted. Oblivious, enduring. He laughed quietly, drawing Saren's attention. She followed his gaze and smiled, her expression softening in a way that would have been unthinkable only days before. "Even here, in exile, the world keeps turning," she said. Nathan nodded. "Maybe that's hope. Maybe that's what we're sending out there. A reminder that life goes on, no matter how lost you feel." Saren reached up, tracing the old scar on his jaw. "And if rescue comes? What then?" His eyes held hers, steady and unafraid. "We face it. Whatever comes, friend, foe, the unknown, we stand together." She closed her eyes, resting her brow against his. "I'm not afraid anymore. Not with you." He kissed her, slow and certain. In that moment, the boundaries of species and history, exile and survival, blurred into insignificance. The two of them, once enemies, now partners, stood as equals against the night. The beacon's pulse cast shifting shadows through the ruined hull. The future was uncertain. Their signal could bring warships or scavengers, mercy or annihilation. But none of it mattered now. They had already claimed something that no power in the galaxy could take, a bond forged by suffering, defiance, and the quiet miracle of hope. Outside, the beast lifted its head, chewing with placid unconcern, as if it too believed in the ordinary endurance of life. Nathan watched the animal, then looked down at Saren, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Guess we're not so different from that thing, he said, voice warm. She arched a brow, the old arrogance returned for a heartbeat. I hope I'm a little more dignified. Nathan laughed, the sound ringing in the hush. Much more. Together they faced the endless dark, two hearts, once enemies, now beating in unison. In the hush of the alien night, hope and love burned brighter than the beacon's pulse, a testament to what could be found in the most unlikely of places. That's the end of the story. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.